Kia ora koutou everyone, my name's Glenn Edney. I'm one of the founding trustees of Te Wairua o Te Moana Nui Ocean Spirit Charitable Trust. Today I'd like to give you an overview of our Hauora Moana community monitoring program, and I'll do that with a PowerPoint presentation and just give you a few of the highlights of what the program is actually about. So I'm just going to push pause right now and set up the PowerPoint and then be right back with you. Okay, so Te Wairua o Te Moana Nui Ocean Spirit Trust has been a registered charitable trust now for just a little bit over a year, and we have been running our Hauora Moana program for about 3 years now. So one of the things about the trust is, first of all, our vision, as you can see on the screen here, is a healthy moana in which coastal ecosystems and human communities can thrive in a harmonious and respectful, mutually beneficial relationship. And we believe very strongly in the idea of local community-based management, and really agree with one of the fundamental principles of ecosystem-based management, which is that ecosystems manage themselves. And what we're involved in doing as communities is managing our activities so that those activities are in harmony with the healthy functioning of the ecosystem. We think that the people that are best placed to do that are actual local community people themselves, and these are the people, those of us who live in relationship with coastal ecosystems. We are the people best placed to actually take that responsibility on of caring for our local places. This relationship has traditionally been a reciprocal relationship, and it's really time, I think, that we come back into that state of reciprocity with the ecosystems that sustain us. So the first step in any kind of management structure is to monitor. We need to know what's there. We need to know what the state of things are before we can make any sensible management decisions. And there are all sorts of ways of monitoring ecosystems. Traditionally, our monitoring has been based around our own experience and the relationship on a day-to-day basis with those ecosystems. In modern times, a lot of that monitoring has kind of been exported to experts. And so many community people, many whole communities, as well as interest groups within communities, start to feel really disempowered in their own ability to not only monitor, but then make decisions about how things should be. So the Hauora Moana Community Monitoring Program really it comes out of research that I conducted for a master's degree, and that research was primarily taken in the Solomon Islands and in Vanuatu. And what I was particularly interested in looking at was the correlation between traditional ecological knowledge and modern scientific understanding, ecological understanding. Also particularly interested in what level of agreement there was or is between people in a community setting when it comes to assessing the state of their ecosystems. So from our perspective, a community-based monitoring program, it needs to be able to give real-time feedback to the community. So they need to get basically instant feedback on what they're seeing, because they need to make decisions based on how things actually are at the time. And so it needs to give that real-time feedback. And that, of course, then gives a really clear idea about what sort of impact our activities and behaviours are having. So that's a little bit about it. Now, I was saying traditionally, we've made management decisions not only through our empirical observations through daily activities and that direct feedback through that empirical observation. We notice if something's getting depleted, we notice if we're having an impact. But probably more importantly, a lot of the a lot of the feedback that we get from our ecosystems is based on our relationship, our deeper relationship, and that relationship is intuitive, it's energetic, and qualitative, and it's primarily based around in what we now, I guess, in a wider frame, are starting to understand as that connection to the Māori of a place. And that, of course, gives us the clue that what we're talking about here is nothing new. It's something that's been going on for a really, really long time. And, when things have been going on for a long time, often it's because they work really well. And so, for us and our perspective is, why not go back to tried and proven methodologies, which is that deep relationship and listening to our intuitive sensing of the place. So a part of that is that with that deep relationship, and again fitting in with the idea of the Māori of a place, is that we all share the source, that same source of Māori, that life force, that energetic force that brings life to everything. And when we're in that kind of relationship, a fundamental change happens. So we're no longer the observer observing a what and it. We are actually in relationship with another who. And so the reef, the mangrove forest, the estuary, they become a living presence, a living being, and we are relating to that other living being. And so this gives us a way of experiencing the other's life force, the other's Māori, and this is what is at the basis of a qualitative approach to monitoring. So how does the Hauora Moana monitoring actually work? Well, the first thing is, of course, we need to get in the water. And what we do is we are actually in the water primarily snorkeling. This can be done on scuba, but not everybody has access to scuba. Not everybody has the equipment, the qualifications, the skills, and so on. But snorkeling and free diving is much, much more accessible to people. And so with this program, we're primarily looking at coastal sites, inshore sites that are easily accessible and that can be encountered and experienced either at the surface or just by diving in fairly shallow waters. So the monitoring itself is actually based on a methodology, a qualitative methodology known as free choice profiling. And free choice profiling is what I used in my research to look at that correlation and level of agreement between people about the qualities they were experiencing coming from the reef. Now, free choice profiling has two parts, and the first part is where you actually develop your own descriptive terms to describe the qualities that you're experiencing coming from the subject. So in this case, coming from the reef. So that's the first part. The second part is that you then take those terms that you've developed and you score them. And so on the screen, you can see that we have a list of indicators on the left-hand side, and then you can see these unmarked lines and there's a minimum maximum to those lines. Then now this is a way of bringing the quantitative and the qualitative together, really, because what we're actually doing is we are going in the water and we're treating these list of indicators as questions. So we're going into the reef, into the mangrove forest, the estuary, wherever it may be, and we are engaging with this being and we are asking questions. So the question, how is the state of your Māori? How is the state of diversity abundance? How is the state of your Euryclonia kelp forests? And the important thing is that we are looking at it from the perspective of the reef itself, rather than from our own perspective. So in other words, we're saying, rather than what's in it for us, we're actually saying, how is it for you? And this is an intuitive process, so there's no marks. It's not a 1 to 10 scale or a percentage scale or anything like that. What we're actually asking is that each surveyor just puts a mark along that line wherever they feel or intuit that it's an appropriate place to be. And so that's basically how it is. We go in there, we're asking questions, we are in relationship with the reef, and we are getting feedback directly from the reef. So very qualitative in that way. Now I should mention too that for each survey there needs to be a minimum of 4 surveyors, and each person is doing their survey individually. They're not sharing their experiences while they're in the water, so that's completely individual. Obviously for safety, we're running a buddy system and all of the normal standard safety procedures. But in terms of the actual experiencing from the reef, this is an individual process. We come together afterwards and we actually run a consensus process. So I hope that's kind of reasonably clear for you. So once we've been in the water and we've heard from the reef and we've made our marks, we then come to this consensus process. The consensus process is really, really important for a number of reasons. First of all, the more eyes, the more ears, the more sensing bodies that are in the water having an experience of the place, the more information we actually have. So basically, the more data we have. The consensus process can serve several functions. First of all, it is that extra data. Secondly, it makes sure, or it certainly mitigates any personal biases or agendas that a person may have. And this, of course, has an impact on the shifting baseline problem and challenge that we all face in any kind of monitoring. If we've got a number of people, and particularly if we've got people from different generations, different life experiences, different knowledge bases, all of this coming into the mix can really help to smooth out any of those personal biases as well as those shifting baselines. Obviously, I'm only running through this, and there's a lot more detail in how all of that actually comes together. But I'm just trying to give you a bit of an overview as to how it actually works. Now, one of the things that's really important in the consensus process is that we practice what we call deep listening. Also, non-violent communication is another way of putting it, whereby each person's voice and each person's experience is equally as important as anybody else's. So no matter what your level of knowledge, prior knowledge or expertise happens to be, everybody's experience is really equal and just as valid and just as important. The other aspect of it is, of course, that we're in the water and we're close together, we're doing our buddy teams and so on, but we all see and experience some different things. An example might be that one person maybe is a bit of a better free diver than another person, and they're underneath all of the rocks and looking in the nooks and crannies. Maybe they get a better view of crayfish population, for instance. And so the information that they have is really valuable for everybody. So it might be that that really good freediver came across a half a dozen crayfish during the survey, but one of the other people wasn't diving down quite so much, didn't see any. Now, both of them are valid. And so the person who didn't see any is able to rely on that other person's experience. Well, they did actually see those 6 crayfish, and so that can help when we're developing a consensus assessment. So the consensus process is really, really important. It also is amazing in how it builds everybody's depth of understanding, depth of knowledge, and builds that depth of relationship with the actual place. So just very quickly, really, to give you an example, I'm choosing our home area, which is the Tutukaka coast, and we have several sites along the coastline. And I'm just going to highlight one place, which is called Parangarahu, also known as Horseshoe Bay. And that picture that you can see at the top, that's the bay last Tuesday, Wednesday, whichever day it was last week, a day after we moved into level 3, where we were able to actually safely be in the water, doing our social distancing and all of that sort of stuff. Beautiful looking bay. Down below you can see a satellite view of the actual survey site. And what I'd like to do now is just take a couple of minutes and show you a video. And this is a video taken in the winter time in July of 2018. And but this will just give you a little bit of an example of, or give you a feel for what this place is like underwater. So as you go through this video, what I'd ask you to do is a little simple exercise. If you just, once you've been through it, what I'd ask you to do is just, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being critically bad and 10 being absolutely phenomenally great, just give a thought to where you would score this reef on that scale of 1 to 10 in terms of the Māori, in terms of overall health, abundance, and so on. So just be interesting to see what you get out of this little video. It's only a couple of minutes long. So there we go. Yeah, I wonder what sort of scores you gave that reef. Well, here's the survey that went along with that video. So the survey was done at the same time. And this is what we get as an end result after we've done our survey. Basically, we can develop these graphs. Now, the red zone at the bottom is the red critical zone. In other words, things are in dire straits and need immediate action. The yellow zone represents the caution zone, where we know that things are going on. We know that there's a sense of imbalance. And depending on where an indicator may sit on that yellow zone, will determine what actions we might need to take. And then, of course, the green zone represents a state of ecological health, which is basically green for go, all good. Now, you'll also notice that we've got our health indicators, and then we've also got over on the right-hand side here, we've got our impacts. Now, we can see here NIA, for example, in the wintertime, you wouldn't expect to see much nutrient indicator algae. And so it's kind of right up there in that green zone. It's in a good state and kind of what you'd expect in the wintertime. Not so many nutrients coming into the water, less sunshine, you'd expect less algal growth. And then sedimentation, you know, sitting there in that caution zone, and you probably saw from the video that there was a fair amount of sedimentation in there. The Kinnibarrons, right down very close to that critical red danger zone. Over on the right-hand side there, Ostreopsis siamensis was a benthic diatom that first arrived in New Zealand in 1996. Was the first time it was seen. We've been having some outbreaks of Ostreopsis during the summertime up here for the last few years now. And but wintertime, it's temperature related, and as you can see right up there in the green zone, basically meaning that there wasn't any Ostreopsis on that particular survey. Now, we also were in there, as I mentioned, just after we moved into level 3, and this is the state of things that we saw then. So you might notice here too now that we are now focusing just instead of that overall health indicator, we've just moved to just focusing on the MODI, which in this situation not only encompasses that overall health, but obviously takes that a much further than just looking at the physical signs of the ecological health. And because we have all of these other health indicators, we kind of feel that that those give us a pretty good idea of that physical state of health anyway. So you can see that there's a bit of a change. And what's interesting is I'll just quickly show you a comparison between the autumn surveys between 2018, 2019 and this year. And so we've got the purple was 2018, and then we've got the blue, which is 2019, and then the orange this year. So we can actually see that there's quite a difference. Now, just a note here, these two, that was really looking at the overall health and not just at the MODI. And so, or I say looking only at overall health rather than the MODI. So that kind of explains that difference there. But looking at some of the other things, it sort of shows quite an interesting evolution here. And one of the things that we were very interested in was, would we see any difference, and would we feel and experience any difference after 5 weeks of no fishing, no boating, no noise pollution, no land activities such as earth moving, forestry, or anything like that? And so would that have an effect in things like sedimentation? And if we have a look over here, okay, NIA, we're at the end of summer now, into autumn, well and truly into autumn. So that was looking pretty good. But interesting here, look at the sedimentation. We could definitely see that there was less sedimentation. Kinnibarrons, you know, there's been this over the last summer. You know, we had a few easterlies, not as much fishing going on, and we kind of saw that with snapper population slightly better. Our crayfish population was slightly improved, but a little tiny improvement in the Kinnibarrons and the Ostreopsis, you know, getting towards the end of the season, not so much there. So we can now kind of see after 3 years that we've actually got a fairly good body of data that we can draw on. So what do we do with that? And this is where community-based management really benefits from having its own survey methodology and in-house surveying, because as a community, we can actually take what we're assessing ourselves and turn that into management, potentially into management actions. So if we're just looking at the green healthy zone, really, you know, it potentially indicates that things are going on pretty well, and we can either carry on the way we are. It may even mean, if things are really great, that we may be actually able to increase the level of our harvest in some situations, or it might just mean we can just report back to the wider community that everything's great. The yellow caution zone, well, because it's quite a large area, and that can be a whole range of varying degrees to the level of imbalance, because that yellow caution zone really does represent an imbalance of some sort. So the actions could include, increased monitoring so that we can highlight and identify any trends, investigating causal factors, which might be land use, causing eutrophication or siltation, or could be over-harvesting of certain species. And this yellow caution zone could also include actual actions which might be precautionary reduction of harvesting, as an example. The red critical zone, well, we know that action is needed, and it's needed yesterday. And so this indicates this immediate and decisive action. So these sorts of things, immediate rahui, immediate halt to what's going on land activities while remedial steps are taken to address the impact. So I guess this is pretty much a roundup of what the whole program is about. If you're interested in learning any more, please get in touch. We'd be really, really happy to share with you. As far as we're concerned, this is open source, and so if you're interested, just get in touch, and be happy to talk further with you. So thanks very much for your time.